Wakey for Pulsar, Wakey for the ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Media Watch. I'm your host, Dr. Sully. And every week we take a look at the news, structured into the following format. First we look at a main headline, we follow that by general headlines, and then we look at Sikh news specifically. Now the news that we look at isn't necessarily just UK, it's also international as well, so there's an international show going out. Now this week we've got some fantastic guests, like we always do, and it's so wonderful that they spent their time to come out to the studio with us. First of all, we've got Emunpreet Kaur, and it's great to meet you, Emunpreet Rai, and also we've got Amarpal Sidhu. Now, I'm going to let them introduce themselves in more detail and tell us a little bit about what they do and what exciting things you're up to at the moment.
Thank you, Zoe. So I'm a risk consultant at Ernst & Young, been with the company for 2 years now. Most of my work is around strategy, around performance improvement, risk, so credit risk, market risk, a lot of regulatory advisory work too. So I get to, try out, various things. Most of my clients are big investment banks in the city, and I've got to travel quite a bit around the world. So I'm usually on client site 90% of the time. Probably only spend about 10% of my time in the EY offices for meetings and things, but other than that, I'm on client site advising the client there and there.
So glad that you made time to come and spend time with us today.
Thank you, no problem.
Amarpal, great to see you. We met ages ago when we were talking about some fantastic artwork, history work. We'd best to describe you as a famous author, historian.
Well, trying to be, trying to be an author, trying to be get my books out there.
So on that note, I should say, pardon the pun, we've got your book here, which is the first Anglo-Sikh War, which has just come out, which is amazing. It's been republished, hasn't it? Recently, it's come out again, and we've actually got it on Kindles now as well.
That's right. Yes. It originally came out about 4 years ago, and but the publishers noticed there was a lot of demand, so they've brought it out on paperback as well, and hopefully available in India as well. We're working on a deal with publishers in India as well, and there's a second book coming out soon as well on the Second Anglo-Sikh War, pretty soon.
Very good. So let's start off with the very first news headline. We believe that today being Friday, Parliament has been recalled, maybe probably already made a decision. Interestingly, David Cameron goes to the UN and talks about the fact that, maybe it's a good idea to join the coalition and become involved in fighting the ISIS, also known as the Islamic State group that are currently under a whole ton of, I would say, very barbaric activity. I won't go into more detail. Now, the US-led coalition has targeted oil refineries in Syria, and according to the Pentagon, has generated, these particular facilities generate up to £2 million worth of. I keep asking myself that question, and I know we've covered this issue before as well, that aren't there any other solutions here, apart from bombing? We seem to be going back in again. I mean, if the decision is made, it probably has been made by this time, that there will be a joining up with coalition. Isn't there anything else that we can do? Where are the religious leaders right now? But I mean, let's talk a little bit. What do you think about this situation? We're going back in again. We've been away. We go back in again. We train up people. It's just war, isn't it?
I think so. You mentioned barbaric action. So what's definitely clear is that ISIL is a terrorist organisation, and the acts that they're involved in are barbaric. Definitely. So that is something that all MPs are in agreement about. And the MPs are currently in, the House of Commons now debating over whether we should join with the UAE, with Saudi Arabia, and fight ISIS. But I think fundamentally the question that we need to ask ourselves is, one, is fighting a war, another Western war, going to stop terror? So is it going to stop what's going on, or is it just going to spread terror and even more terror? Is it going to then encourage ISIS to do more and to fight back? And is this then going to encourage, say, homegrown terrorists? Because that is a problem that we face here too. As with anything, I think there are two sides, to the argument. So I think, yes, okay, we could sit here and do nothing and let the Saudi Arabia and let the US fight back. But actually, the foreign minister of Iraq has asked the UK for their involvement. So, we've been asked to get involved. It's not us saying, saying, okay, we're going to come in and join you all, but, we've been asked to do it. So, we do have a duty there. I think arguments for retaliation is, firstly, that we've been asked to do it, but secondly, that if we don't fight this war now, and if we don't act on this war, we will soon find ourselves in a similar situation to Iraq, where, the fight's continuing and a lot of bombing going on, and it's going to get worse, and encourage and empower ISIS to do more.
Cynics might suggest that the reason why the West is so interested is because there's a lot of oil out there and other interests. I mean, I know when you've done a lot of historical research, you've actually seen that it's not as easy as black and white. Sometimes there's other interests. There's a web of activity going on. You need to find out how do they get so big so quickly. Kind of the root cause of this. I do agree with your point about the fact that ultimately, you have to do something, and you get to the root of this issue here. There are so many issues, aren't there, involved? But historically, we see that are we making the same mistakes again and again?
I think it's very important to stand up against terrorism, and that's my point of view. And I totally agree with what David Cameron's doing at the moment, which is to stand up against these people. They're massacring, their own people, their own Iraqis. They're massacring non-Muslims. And if you look at Sikh history and what the Gurus taught us, we went through the same thing. We had the Mughal emperors busy, effectively doing the same thing. Aurangzeb actually did much worse than what these ISIL people are doing. We know our own history. Babies sort of slaughtered and made into garlands around their mothers' necks and stuff like that. ISIL haven't even got anywhere close to that. You have to stand up against these people, and if you don't, then they gain even more courage, and they realise that the world's not doing anything. We can do what we want. So it's in our interest in the long run to actually do something and show courage.
I found a really interesting program that was on BBC Three. I don't know if you had a chance to see it. It was called My Brother the Terrorist, and it was about a stepbrother situation and how he had become. He was a white guy, lived in the UK, brought up in the UK, white family. Like I said, stepbrother.
Yeah.
But one of the brothers had become the term that they're using, which is radicalised. And he kind of interviewed a lot of people and spent time with them as well. Ultimately, that person's now behind bars because there's a possible accusation that he was involved in a terror plot, and the jury, agreed with that situation and was put away. But you see that even there's been a lot of police activity recently about rounding people up because they, I think you mentioned if there is that threat in the UK, if they're over there in doing their stuff, they might come back over here. And recently on the show we were talking about somebody suggesting that maybe they shouldn't be British citizens if they're going to damage the country that they're from.
Yeah.
So there's that issue as well, isn't it? That maybe to iron that problem out, we've got to protect ourselves in our homelands. If that is the case, I mean, we've got a balanced point of view here. Some people might say that's quite convenient to say that because it adds further weight to going out there and testing your weapons.
It is definitely the case. I think with access to, online media, and access to YouTube, for example, where we can, look at ISIS and look at what they think they believe in, we're prone to say, what the term is brainwashing. And so a lot of UK-born Muslims have, in a sense, been brainwashed by ISIS and have gone and flown out there and have joined their forces. So, the problem comes down to one, the media, how media portrays ISIS, and two, the awareness of how powerful ISIS is, because we've already heard of the beheading of a British hostage. That's just one example of how much power they have, and so we have to act now.
What I would say is quite good this week is that there were, you talk about British-born Muslims, there's been a whole load of British-born Muslims that have come out and have sat down and they've prayed for peace. They've prayed for the fact that they do not have any association with ISIS.
No, because this organisation doesn't stand up for Islam. It's not a good representation of the faith at all. So, and a lot of Muslims recognise that, and for that reason, we have Saudi Arabia joining forces with the US to fight ISIS. So, clearly they're not representing Islam at all.
Okay, well, that's really fantastic insights. Let's move on to the next part of the programme. We look at other headlines. This week, a couple of headlines that came about. First of all, kind of related in one sense that we had Ed Miliband as part of, he's the leader of the Labour Party in the UK, and he had done a speech by standing up, and I think it's the third time he's done it, very personable speech to be able to stand up in front of lots and lots of hundreds and hundreds of people, not necessarily to use an auto cue, and an auto cue is like a little glass thing or a little box which will actually have the words coming out slowly so that it can remind the presenter. I used to have one of those once. But he hasn't used that, he's learnt it from memory, but the criticism was he missed a couple of things out. Right, we've got a slide to show you that. And secondly, David Cameron mic'd up and was caught, I'm not sure if that's the right phrase to use, it was a private conversation he was having and kind of broke away from protocol and said something about what the Queen felt about the independence decision. Now, people in the public eye seem, every word, everything they say is scrutinised. This is fair or not unfair? What do you think?
I think as a public figure, you know that anything you say in public is going to go viral. It's going, people will know what your opinion is on certain matters.
Do you want to see people fail? Is that what it is? It's a vicious streak within humanity? That kind of person. No, he failed.
No, not at all. I think it comes down to media too. So media have a choice on what they, well, to an extent, they have a choice on what they present. And so in terms of David Cameron's private conversation, they really shouldn't have been recording at the time. But at the same time, David Cameron has a duty to the monarch to keep secret the private conversation he has with them.
Private thoughts, yeah.
Yeah.
A private conversation with somebody.
Well,
so
he had spoken. Yeah, he'd spoken about the monarch and said that she had purred. The relief of Scotland, Scotland not being independent, and so. He has admitted that he was wrong, and he has admitted that he shouldn't have had that private conversation, and he has apologised. In terms of Ed Miliband's situation with his speech.
I mean, you do lots of presentations.
Yes, I do, yeah.
You talk in front of as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so at EY we're encouraged to present in front of hundreds of people. We present in front of clients, in front of new joiners, in front of even senior staff too. And I think personally, Ed Miliband's approach to presenting is unique and works incredibly well for him because
it's an inclusive situation, isn't it?
Yeah, so what he prefers to do is write out his script, but not learn it word for word. So at the conference that was in the news that this relates to, he spoke for an hour. So he spoke for an hour at this conference with only one A4 sheet that had maybe, I can't remember, I think 5 or 6 headlines, just headings. So he didn't follow a word-for-word speech. He had known what he wanted to speak about. And that is amazing to do that because he comes across as more conversational with the audience and it connects, and you're able to connect better with the audience by doing that. And that's something that I prefer to do as well because I think if you are following a word-for-word script, you can come across as being very mechanical and robotic. Yeah. And other politicians are guilty of that. Yeah, exactly, death by PowerPoint. So, I think he doesn't deserve that at all.
Right. You think that you've been a little bit unfair?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's very important when you do a speech to make it lively, make it, interesting. Otherwise, there's no point. Everyone's going to go to sleep. So, good on him if he didn't use the auto cue. And obviously, some mistakes will happen. Simply because he's doing it as he goes along. But that makes for a more powerful speech. It doesn't make for a more boring speech which has everything in there. But
it's interesting. You don't want to necessarily repeat yourself as well. I think you were mentioning, we were talking before the show started, that in a way, some of those issues which he's been accused of not covering were already covered in conference week. So it's not like, he needs to be the person that summarises what everyone said.
Yeah.
But anyway, other story this week is that we note the fact that India has launched a Mars kind of orbiter. On a serious point, I mean, you wonder sometimes that is great. Sometimes there's an ego trip there. Sometimes it shows the great intelligence that the country has to be able to put something like that into space on a fantastic budget.
It's great for morale, I think. India having a space project, getting something to Mars, which very few other countries have done, and doing it on a really small budget as well. It just shows. I'm sure a lot of people in NASA are very worried, about their budgets, because they're
NASA's budget.
Well, for 2014, it's £11 billion. So, compared to India's, 74 million? It's a lot more. I think what's also remarkable about this mission to Mars is that out of 51 attempts in the world, only 21 have succeeded. And India is actually the first Asian country to have succeeded in a mission to Mars. Previously, it was the US, UK, and Europe, and Russia as well that had succeeded. So to be the first Asian country is a big achievement for India.
It's a big achievement. And like I say, kind of devil's advocate here a little bit, in the context that, you may have a lot of people living on the poverty line in that country. So sometimes money can be used to prove to other people that you can do it a better way, collaborate with other countries. The International Space Station is an ideal example of that. Other news this week, we talk about international issues. We've had the climate change conference this week. And we got a little video to show you of Leonardo DiCaprio telling the UN Climate Change Conference, make history or be vilified by it.
This is not a partisan debate, it is a human one. Clean air and a livable climate are inalienable human rights. And solving this crisis is not a question of politics, it is a question of our own survival. This is the most urgent of times and the most urgent of messages. Honored delegates, leaders of the world, I pretend for a living, but you do not. The people made their voices heard on Sunday around the world, and the momentum will not stop. But now it is your turn. The time to answer humankind's greatest challenge is now. We beg of you to face it with courage and honesty.
He expresses one sentiment. He says, I'm not talking to you as an actor because I just pretend, don't we all? But, ultimately, he's talking to the conference as a person, like we all are, that are concerned. And if you look at the figures, I saw a really interesting CNN thing recently, which were showing the emissions in the West, the emissions in the East, how some European countries and the US are doing a bit better. Whereas if you look at China and India, definitely there is an issue there about, obviously if you manufacture more, you can have more carbon emissions, whether or not you meet your targets. But isn't this, and this incredible amount of waste there is in the West, buy one, get one free. You're going to buy 2 salads, but you're only going to eat 1, So, is there something that we can all do, climate-wise, or, kind of being more aware? Or would you just want to wait for a bunch of politicians to get together? Apparently, this conference was very, very well attended, and the reason why is because of the changing weather systems that they see as a result of this. Even if you are a climate change denier, you can see the amount of what's actually happening out there in terms of the summers and the winters.
That's right. Yeah, I think it's the times are really changing. And it's very important for everyone to stand up for these sort of issues. And especially actors, when people like that or Tom Cruise or whatever, talk about something like this, everybody listens. You've got things like Facebook, Twitter now. These guys are followed by millions. One sort of a few words on some subject like this suddenly gets out to hundreds of millions of people. So it's
about
very.
packaging. So, I think it's like it's easily packaged and it's easy to kind of communicate, and whether it be a movie star, they're easier in terms of articulating what the issue is, and that scientists cannot do that. Or is it the fact that they portray a particular passion for the fact that it's important? Why do we seem to have... Angelina Jolie did a great job recently with the rape situation, with those kind of war crimes that take place. Why are we reliant on people to do that kind of thing from a celebrity perspective?
I think we can't speak for all celebrities, so we can't sit here and say, they don't have a passion for it, or they've been asked to do it, or it's for money, or we don't know what the underlying motive is, but it could be that they do have a passion for something. So I heard recently that Emma Watson had given a similar speech around feminism, and so she's advocating now, being an advocate for women's rights. So I think if they have the background and the skill set to present to hundreds and thousands of people, and why not? They're able to make that big change that is required in society.
Like you said, that they might have thousands of followers on social media and stuff, and that makes the difference, does it?
Yeah, I think everyone's views are equal. Just because somebody's a politician doesn't mean he's an expert. He's a common man who's got a position of responsibility, but that doesn't make him any superior to anybody else. So everyone's got a view, and they're all valid.
It's a statement. In one sense, it's a statement, and in the other sense, it's also like sometimes you're not actually given. You're made aware of what the issue is and how important it is, and it's kind of like sensationalism. And then after that, you don't actually get given anything to. You have to use your own imagination to solve the problem. So we now know that climate change is an issue, but what practical tips have we got to solve this? Do we need to go somewhere to, locate better ways of managing our house? Maybe we need to have smart metering or whatever it is that's going to be coming around the corner. Maybe we need to have better things that can help us in our daily lives.
Yeah.
We don't seem to get, we get sensationalism, but we don't get ideas. I don't know. Do you think that's the case, or do you have to wait for another channel to open up to make it easy to access what we should do personally? So one way we express how bad it is, another way we don't do anything about it.
I think you mentioned sensationalism, so I think media has a huge part to play in this, and a huge part in terms of encouraging communities to speak up and to make that change. So the media, there's one level where the media report on, say, facts and figures, which is fine, but then they may overhype, particular articles or, whatever about celebrities, and, which takes away some of the power from, other issues. And so I think media has a huge part to play. And if they do find themselves, say, omitting certain facts, for example, which is another level, I think, of sensationalism, then that's twisting the truth a lot.
I know
You know what I mean? Like in terms of making that change, they need
what you're
to
saying
be.
is that they're positioning it to such a way that they think it's an important thing that people should care about. My thing is purely about the fact that corporates have a responsibility as well, and sometimes they're kind of let off lightly. That's like, it's all very well, you can talk about it, and is it such a bad thing? But where is the corporate responsibility to make that change? Where is the corporate responsibility to say, look, as a PR perspective, we've done X, Y, Z, and that's why we're improving. Okay, PR in one sense, but here it's had an impact on the carbon footprint. Here it's made an impact on, the fact that it changed people's lives or communities, like you said. Let's move on to the final part of the programme. We've got just 2-3 minutes left. I note that there's an exhibition going on, and I think it's the last couple of days left, I think. If you get a chance to go Saturday, Sunday. The exhibition is called Empire, Faith and War. You get more information at empirefaithwar.com. We've got a picture of a lovely couple of soldiers who mocked up and put all the uniforms on. They look really good. I think I've read somewhere, I was noting here, that it's being featured on Sky News, Times, Daily Telegraph, BBC Radio 4, BBC Radio 2, BBC Radio London, BBC Asian Network, BBC been quite involved in this, the Asian News India, NDTV and many media outlets around the world. So which goes back to fantastic that we have these kind of books, and you've spent so much time developing that. Maybe one day there'll be more interest in, you know, actually putting that into the national curriculum and being part of, you know, everyday thinking, so we get better communities because they're better able to respect each other because they know about the rich heritage that we have out there between Sikhs and other communities as well.
Yeah. Well, I can't, you mentioned the exhibition, I can't recommend that enough. I actually went to it on its opening night, and absolutely brilliant. And there's some stuff in there which won't be, you know, seen together for many a year now, so it's worth going.
The creators have done a great job, you know, I think Punjabi Heritage, I think they've done it. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks so much to our guests, Emunpreet, and also to Amarpal, Sidhu, historian, wonderful person, you know, who works for EY and does some great things there. So until next time, thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.
Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.